testing the stream. Just put the audio down very gently in the background, and we're just going to check. Oh no, lovely. That's probably just they haven't set it yet. So we'll go up there and get them all show ready. So I think we're all good. Coming over there, coming into the stream, and how are you monitoring? Is this there, Luke? Audio.
Welcome to Welcome to Hinxton Hall Conference Centre. Please can we have your attention for a short briefing? There are no fire drills planned today, so if the fire alarm sounds, please make your way calmly to the nearest exit. If you think you may need assistance when evacuating, please let a member of the venue staff know as soon as possible, just in case. Smoking is prohibited throughout our site, apart from at designated smoking areas. Please ask at reception for details of the nearest designated area. Please do not smoke outside the entrance. Lastly, if you have registered any dietary requirements or allergies, please make a member of staff aware, as food may have been prepared specially for you. Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy the event.
Well, there's a call gone out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, did it come out in here as well?
No, I was just stood out there.
Oh,
Heard
okay.
the announce. Only just, yeah.
attention
Good morning,
for a
everyone.
short briefing.
So
If you
do
think
hit the
you
fire
may need
alarm,
assistance,
there's an exit in the corner here, or make a run for it. If you think you need assistance when evacuating, please let a member of the venue staff know. The AV team are here. There's a housekeeping team out on site as well. Smoking prohibited throughout the site. There are designated smoking areas. The nearest one I've seen is just the end of the building opposite Hinxton Hall.
area.
And if you have
Please
any
do
registered
not
dietary
smoke
requirements or
outside
allergies,
the
please make a member of staff
entrance.
aware, as food may have to be
Lastly,
specially
if you have registered any dietary requirements or allergies, please make a member of staff aware, as food may have been prepared specially for you. Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy the event.
Perfect. Okay, good morning everyone, and a very warm welcome to Electronic Security and Surveillance, Defining Competency, High Security and Emerging Threats. It's a pleasure to host the first academic seminar run by the ASC, and I'm delighted that we can be together, united by a shared interest in how our industry evolves to meet the demands of a changing threat landscape. My name is Sam Stewart. I'm UK Sales Manager for Vicon Industries, with a title sponsor for today's event, and delighted to support the programme, not just because it showcases the expertise within our sector, but because it encourages exactly the type of discussion that we need, which is open, evidence-based and forward-looking. For those maybe less familiar with Vicon, we've been part of the global surveillance industry for over 55 years, design and manufacture intelligent video management systems, high-performance cameras and integrated access control solutions, many of which are deployed in the most demanding environments across government, education, healthcare, critical infrastructure, high-security institutions around the world. But perhaps more importantly, our philosophy has been one to combine technical innovation with real-world practicality, because innovation only matters when it works for the people using it. Whether we're developing modular camera technologies, advancing AI analytics, or supporting compliance under new legislation like Martin's Law, our aim is the same, which is to help organizations design and operate surveillance systems that are ethical, resilient, and effective. So, in many ways, today's theme, defining competency, high security, and emerging threats, sits right at the heart of what Vicon stands for. So to find out more about who we are and what we do, visit us in the foyer. We're kind of directly across from the door, and just keep walking till you see the flashing cameras. So if we step back just for a moment, I think it's fair to say our industry is experiencing one of its most transformative periods in decades, with the rapid changes in AI, automation, and greater scrutiny on compliance and data ethics, a heightened focus on accountability. Ensuring those specifying, installing, and maintaining systems are genuinely competent to do so is more important than ever. These aren't abstract issues. They are going to define how we protect people, property, and public confidence. Yep. Despite the advances, challenges do remain. The gap between what technology can do and what organizations are actually equipped to deliver in terms of competence, governance, and integration is still significant. And that's why today's sessions are so valuable. They bring together thought leaders and practitioners to not only explore what's possible, but what's responsible and sustainable in a modern security environment. Our first session this morning is going to focus on the foundation of everything that follows, which is competency. Competency, or indeed incompetency, shapes every outcome in this sector, from how we interpret risk, how we design systems, to how we respond when things go wrong. We'll begin with a seminar entitled Competency or Incompetency, which will challenge us to reflect on how the industry currently defines capability, not just through qualifications or certification, but through behavior, accountability, and continual learning. Following that, we'll hear advancing industry standards, which is the latest developments for the electromechanical certification scheme, that delves into how professional standards are evolving to create measurable frameworks for quality assurance. This session will also look at the relationship between technical excellence and regulatory trust, something that's increasingly vital as the sector continues to professionalise. And we'll conclude that first block with a panel discussion, bringing together those voices from across practitioners and regulatory bodies to consider a crucial question. How do we align competence frameworks with the rapidly changing reality of modern security systems? At Vicon, we see that conversation reflected every day in the field. A system's technical specification is only as good as the understanding of the people who designed it and deployed it. The distinction between a camera that records and a system that protects is not just the technology, its competence, its integration, and its intentional design. And that's why today's theme isn't about theory, it's the future capability of our profession. So whether you come from a design background, engineering, operational, or academic, I hope this morning gives you some new insights, perhaps a few provocations to take back to your own work. Thank you for being here and contributing to what I know will be an excellent day of discussion. Before we hand over to Trevor for our first seminar, please welcome me in joining Gary Thomas, Chair of the ASC.
Good morning. I'm going to be brief. First of all, I'm going to thank Sam and Vicon for sponsoring. Without the support of these organisations, obviously we wouldn't be able to run these. I'm going to thank Dennis, who has put a lot of effort into arranging this seminar, and I'm sure you're going to be extremely pleased at the end of the day. You're going to learn a lot, etc. What I would say is this is the first time that we've actually run an event like this. So the ASC have championed academia for a number of years by giving out the IMBIT Award, but we've never really done much more than that. But since Dennis has become a director, we've actually broadened that substantially. We're reaching out to a lot more academic institutions. We're putting a lot more foundation to that now. So we really want to thank Dennis for that. And I actually think he deserves a round of applause because you've got no idea how much time he's dedicated to that. So please do join me in a round of applause. I'm just going to briefly give you an overview of the ASC. So you know it's a membership organisation designed primarily for the interests of consultants. We've actually grown our numbers in particular over the last 2 years. We were stagnating at around about 360 for 2 or 3 years, and over the last year we've now gone to 450. So there's an amazing amount of growth in the last year. We've also acquired the Sabre scheme from the British Research Establishment. That's being run as a separate entity to the ASC, even though we own it. It's not designed as a membership benefit in any way, but we're looking at growing that internationally as well, as is the influence of the ASC. I don't know what else to say to you really, apart from enjoy the day. And is there anything else I need to say? Right. Sorry. Anyway, I'm going to hand you over to Dennis now, and all I'd like to say is just enjoy the day, and we'll look forward to some feedback at the end of the day as well. Thank you very much. Sorry, one last. Does everybody have a copy of the programme? If not, Dennis has got some up here. If you do want one, just let him know. Thank you.
It's me. Good morning, everybody. Well, Gary obviously just introduced you. Me. My name is Dennis Rowe. Sorry. Yeah, no problem. I'll laze you for that. My role here is academic engagement, professional development within the ASC. First and foremost, before we sort of crack into anything, this applies to both seminars, both in here and across in the auditorium. If you have any questions at any point throughout the day, that QR code, which you'll see coming up continuously, and it's also on the programs, will take you to a very simple web page. So complex, it's got one box, it's got one question. What's your question? So plop a question in there, and then in our case, Sam will then read out those questions. We're trying to avoid the situation, you've all been there, guy at the back wants to, ask a question, so the guy's got to run up to the back with the mic, and then you can't hear him. And then the guy at the front wants it, and so he turns to track back. That allows you all to pose any questions you might have at any time. You don't have to worry about saying it in front of everybody, and we will answer them. And if we run out of time, we will try to do our best to answer them separately, depending on what the questions are, and so on. Objectives for today. We've got a whole load of goals which we're trying to tick off at the same time. Defining competency. Now, it's funny, we hear a lot of people saying you need to be competent to do whatever it actually is, but actually what does that mean? Is it a qualification? Is it some what exactly, and how do you show it? That's goal number one, and we're gonna discuss that. FES technicians, fire, emergency and security systems. So the technicians who are operating with electronic security systems, what relevance does that have to you if you're security consultants? We're going to find out about that. We're going to have a quick look at career progression, and the mapping out of where people can get into the industry and where they can go. We're also going to discuss why you need to look into and address this now and not leave it for a future hypothetical date. And we're going to have a look at processes, examples of security issues, shall we say. Many of my colleagues are very experienced within the security sector and come with an excellent foundation. I approach it from the opposite direction, which is stuffing wires in places, seeing what goes bang, and then saying, hey, we should be aware of that situation. Yes, you'll find out more about that a little bit later. I should also warn you that I've probably rigged the doors so you can't get out, and so, and I've got a bad sense of humor. And of course, the last bit is we're going to see how this all interconnects with education, with professional development, and so on. And by the end, certainly if you've managed to stick it out, or you've managed to find another route via other doors that aren't locked, and you've escaped us, by the end of this day, you should see how this all ties together very nicely. Now, I'm not stealing anybody else's thunder here, because there's quite a lot of definitions around competency and slightly different wording. So my wording is going to be different probably to Trevor's, different to Dan's, and so on. I particularly like this definition. If you type into Google, what is competence? The HSE's website is the one that will pop up generally first and foremost. I like that on the basis that I've always worked on the basis that if I've mucked something up, the most likely person that's or organization that's going to sue me is going to be the HSE. And as they're kind of, the government, they'd probably use their own definition, and the courts will probably accept it as well. And the HSE defines it quite simply like that: training, knowledge, skills, experience. Your ability to apply all 4 of those items to undertake a task safely and efficiently. And those 4 elements must directly relate to the task you are doing. So bear that one in mind. If you can't prove one of those items, potentially the whole definition and question of whether you are competent to do that job just starts to dissolve, and you are deemed not competent. And then we have some issues. We have some issues in the form of liability. Will your insurance cover something or other? If you were in court and they discover you haven't got the skills or you haven't got the training and you are not deemed competent, what will that do in that particular situation? So, why are we discussing technicians? We are consultants. Well, it turns out that for everything there needs to be a foundation, a base. And in fact, if you think about it, what's the first role? I mean, very few people come out of secondary education and go straight into being a security consultant. I don't think so. I hope not. But that would be quite unusual to find people doing that. They normally will start in other roles and progress from there. And normally that foundation, that first role, would be some sort of apprenticeship, going to work as a trainee in some sort of organization. That could be FES. That could be something else. It could be security risk management. But you're not going to start at the top of the chain. You're going to start somewhere, and you will progress from there. And I often describe security consultancy as being pretty much the peak, the tip of a pyramid, because you need to have built up a lot of competencies in order to get that point, in order to address. And so if you think about it, security consultants are up there at the top. They normally report to some sort of hierarchy within an organization, but not. The reason I put them above the company directors is because, especially independent security consultants, don't report to just the one, they report to multiple organizations. And so they are the experts that the board of directors rely on to provide them the knowledge and information in order to make an informed decision. Those directors, once they've been told what they need to do, they'll filter it down the chain to some sort of organizational management. They'll filter it down and say, get on with it. And eventually it'll get to the actual suppliers, in this case, the FES suppliers. They will normally hand it straight over to their sales staff and say, go in there, spec the place, provide quotes, tenders, documents, and so that we can then pass it down to the various different technical management, Then that will be assigned to somebody to go and fit it, a technician. I put in brackets gold card. We're going to hint about that, and you've got to pay attention to it now. And of course, our poor trainee apprentice who's just entered the industry is down there at the bottom. But we can very clearly see there's quite a line upwards that they can progress when they decide to move up in the world. You notice I put FES sales above technical. I always use this example, so please, if you've heard me say it before, I'm sorry. I've got very little new material. Has anybody been made aware of a famous boat, a postal boat that sank, which was a really good example of a failure in the design stage? Any guesses? You know, I thought everybody was aware of the Titanic. But, you know, I quite often pose that question, and everyone's like, no, I've never heard of a postal boat. The RMS Titanic, or Royal Mail Ship Titanic, of course, sank. We've all watched the movie. But the primary reason for its sinking was design failures. It was the design that doomed it. There wasn't enough lifeboats. We all saw that. They couldn't evacuate quickly. We saw that. But whole load of other elements in the background. It was the design. The builders, the technicians, if you like, the engineers, the craftspeople that constructed it were the best on the planet. But it sank, and it sank as a direct result of the design failure. So no matter how good the people fitting it are, if the design is flawed, the solution is going to be flawed. And that's why I've put the sales staff above the technical staff, because they're the ones that provide the design that the technical staff have to go and fit. They're the ones supposed to be doing the risk assessments. They're evaluating the customer's needs. And that then cycles back nicely to qualification levels. Now, again, if you want to type into Google, there it is, gov.uk. There's a nice description of what qualifications mean. And of course, what it's talking about here is the qualification level specifically relates to the difficulty of the education. Right, late people, I see. I've got your names down. The qualification refers to the level of complexity of the task in hand. The more complex the task, the higher the level. Really very simple concept there. So what qualification level does a FES technician require? So they started off doing their apprenticeship. They've now actually gone through an assessment process, or they've gone through a college, and they're down there at the bottom. A technician requires a level 3 qualification in order to now be considered in part competent in order to undertake that task. A level 3. That is the bottom of that pyramid, the very lowest level in this equation. So, if that's the lowest level and it's a level 3, is it appropriate that the people above them are still at level 3 or have less? Or, based on the description of what qualifications mean, when the complexity of the task goes up, surely the level of the qualification should also go up. But that's all part of the larger competency framework. There's a lot more that we can unpack with regards to this. But for now, I'm going to be leaving you at this point. I mentioned there are questions, or if you want to put hands up and we'll run around and I'll answer them, that's perfectly fine. So any questions, scan the code. If there aren't any questions, Trevor Jenks from the SSAIB is going to take over now, and he's going to start digging into more depth. But the point in hand being, we are using the FES technicians as a template that we can use, because the FES technician and the framework that has been developed for the apprentice program transitioning into competent technicians is now set. We know what to do. We know how to evaluate it. We know how they then can prove it to a third party, and we're going to hear that. And so if we take those lessons that they have learned, we can replicate them in other areas, be that sales staff, be that consultants, be that office members. I don't know, whatever it actually is. Once you've got the frame, you can then adjust it to whatever the specific role is. And that's why we are using FES technicians, because the framework is set. Thank you. Over to you, Joe. Oh, yeah, I'll get you one.
Wow. Well, first of all, who am I? That's a lot of people. I've been in this industry since I was 13. So I was working for my father's engineers, going under the floors, pulling cables at that age. I qualified at 16. I was the youngest regional manager in the systems industry, aged 19. And I've worked in all parts of the world, in all technologies. So this is one of my sort of pet hobbies. When I joined as an apprentice, I could walk onto a big construction site. I was one of the higher paid people on the site because I was a security electronics engineer, because we had engineers at that point, on site, and I was paid to suit. And somewhere along the line in the 80s, we went from there to the cement guy, who I know is highly qualified, by the way, saying, why is this guy on site? He can't even make cups of tea. My father's introduction to me when I left school with 0 qualifications, that's what public schools do if you're very good at sports, left school, lined up all the engineers in the company and said, this is my son. They all looked at him as if to say, there's been some doubt about that, boss? He said, this is the apprentice. Anybody who refers to him anything else but that, I will sack. Rule 2, anybody gives him a screwdriver before he can make a cup of tea, I will sack. Have I made this apprentice's position in this company absolutely clear? And they all went, yes, boss, and walked out. And I turned to my father and said, I'm your installation manager. He said, not anymore. You left school without qualifications. I went back into education. So I've been through this one the hard way. I'm the super sector leader.